Yes.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening and welcome, and thank you for joining us. My name is Felicia Christmas, and I am a staff at Delta. Before we get into what we're here to do, just a couple of housekeeping um, or guidelines. I don't want to say rules, but guidelines for being in the space. One, if you are not speaking, your speaker will be your mic will be on mute for the duration of this panel. If you have any questions at all, please place them in the chat. If you don't want to place them in the chat to anyone, you can ask Kemi, who's listed as Jacobs. You can send her the question privately if you don't feel comfortable putting it in the bigger chat. We've turned off everyone's cameras so you could only see the people on the panel, and that you could only speak through the chat. This is also being recorded on live on YouTube, and then this is also just being recorded over Zoom as well. So you can catch it later if you want to spread the word, you want to share it with a friend. That will all be made available to you afterwards. Um, and without further ado, I think we can get into it. Is there anything that I'm missing, panelists? Anyone? No. Okay. So, like I said, my name is Felicia Christmas. I am the Kujastahi team lead at Delta. Um, we hosted this session just so that parents could get a better understanding of what was happening for back to school. I know that there's like a new article every 2 minutes. There's all these updates all the time, and just kind of wanted to centralize that information and have a conversation about how parents are coping with this, and then what is out there, what is the actual messaging, and for those who haven't made a full decision on what is going to happen with their children, we've invited folks that can speak to those things. Um, Before we get entirely started, as always, it is important to do a land acknowledgement, and Kemi Jacobs is going to come on and do that for us
Okay.
today.
All right, so you're going to share the screen for me, Andre. Thank you. We acknowledge that we live and work on traditional Indigenous territories. We are located on the traditional Indigenous territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit. This territory is part of the Dishwich-Wanspoon Treaty, an agreement between the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. This territory is also covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful for the opportunity to work in the community on this territory, even though we have not always recognized the treaties to which we are bound. Toronto is also the home of many people of African descent who were forcibly taken from their land to Canada and other parts of North America, and to many other immigrants who have come to this land. We wish to express gratitude to Mother Earth and for the resources we are using, and to honor us all the First Nation, the Métis and Inuit people who have been living on the land since time immemorial, and to do our part to ensure that their rights are acknowledged and protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, um, for each of the panelists, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. If you could just tell everyone on the call who you are, your name, where you are from, and what you do. So where you are from, based at your agency or organization work, and what you do. Can we start with Manuela?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Manuela Arena, and I am a teacher with the York Catholic District School Board in the elementary panel, and I've been teaching for 18 years within that panel. So thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you for joining us. Sankofa?
Yes. Greetings, everyone. I am Kofi Sankofa, and today I'm going to wear two hats. So, one of the hats I'm going to wear is the one of community activist, community developer. That's what I did before I will speak with my next hat, where we have been working in the community, in the African Canadian community in all aspects, over the years with the JCA, the BBPA, some of our own organization we have developed. So we've been doing activism work. And then my second hat, and I didn't start that job yet. So in September, just now, I'm going to start for the Toronto District School Board, and I'm a community support worker working with schools, families, and community. And so our goal is to make sure that the child is effective, the child is educated, and the child comes out with all its potential, what we call success. And so that's my goal. So what I do is I work with all the different stakeholders to make sure the children are well in the village. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And going further, we have Sana.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Sana Hafiz, and I'm with the Local Immigration Partnership, Toronto West, housed at Delta Family Resource Center. I'll be speaking about the Welcome to School website, which is a web-based inventory of different programs and services that are available for clients, for residents, and also for settlement workers to work with families.
Thank you for joining us. And Mafdet. Siri.
Hi, good evening. It's Mafdet.
Mafdet.
I was just looking at the unmute button. So good evening, everybody. I'm Mafdet, and I'm a mom of 3. And I'll just tell you a little bit about my story. I started homeschooling when my oldest was starting to become school age. And during that time, I quit my job and started a yoga business. So that was about 15 years ago. And I did yoga activist teacher training to certify people of color to become yoga teachers as well. And now I'm a mentor for entrepreneurs. And I have a company called Manifest Your Empire. And in the beginning of our homeschool journey, like I said, I quit my job and I decided to homeschool full time because I felt empowered of taking education in my own hands of my children and feeling empowered by educating my own children and giving them culture and life skills and family values. Back then, families of color weren't very common in Toronto. They're still not as common. They're becoming more common. So there was a lot of trial and error, and I just kept going. We kept going with the homeschooling, and we eventually just got a flow based on our own family and what our needs were over the years. We traveled and we took homeschooling with us, and I continued to grow my business. And as they got older, they started taking online courses, and we're going to end up talking about those types of things later as people are asking questions. They started taking online courses, and they started working jobs since they were 14 years old. So they started gaining life skills in that area. And now my oldest is in his second year university. My middle daughter, she just finished graduate high school last year, and my youngest, who's going to be 5, is going to be starting homeschooling.
Wow, thank you so much. And then Denise.
Hi, greetings and salutation, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to the panel. I am with the Toronto District School Board as a school administrator, and it's important to say I'm not here as a spokesperson, but to share a bit of my experiences. I've been with the board for about 18 years as well, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And then we have Farai.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Farai, and I am the SNAP project coordinator. And I'm just here tonight as in the supportive role. I know a lot of our families have a lot of questions about what to do next. And so my role is just to support and help with the facilitation of this conversation in order for them to get some answers on how to move forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Farai. And then we have Virginia.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Virginia Sandelins. I'm the parent educator at Delta Family Resource Center. I'm also a parent of 3 children, 2 of whom will be getting into the school system this year, 1 into junior kindergarten and 1 into senior kindergarten. So I'm very thankful to be part of this discussion tonight.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for taking the time this evening. The first question, the first thing I want to do is kind of give you an overview of what we know. So what we know for sure is that school starts is between the 15th and the 17th. A couple of boards are doing a staggered approach, but the TDSB for sure is starting on September 15th. We know that now masks are required for all students and faculty. We know that, sorry, I'm also reading. We know that parents are asked to register their children for school, whether they choose in school or online learning by Saturday, August 29th, which is tomorrow, is the day after tomorrow. Elementary school students, which is grades JK to grade 8, will be in school for 5 days a week, full days. We know that schools that are in higher risk communities or communities considered higher risk for catching COVID will have their classes capped at 15 per classroom. That we know that grade 1 to 8 classes will be capped at 20. In all other schools, JK and SK, junior kindergarten, senior kindergarten classes will be capped at 27. Grade 4 to 8 will be capped at 27 as well. And grades 1 to 3 will be capped at 20. We know that secondary students will have a combination of in-class and online learning on alternate days. And they will have synchronous learning, live and online learning, as well as asynchronous independent work daily with enhanced health measures for social distancing. From what we do understand, the high schools will be operating in quadmesters, which means that there's 4 semesters per year. And for students who have chosen to continue their child's learning at home, there will be 4 elementary virtual schools. Each will be connected with 1 learning center. So I guess when we talk about, and that there's so much more information, but I know that our panelists are very, they're well-versed and could speak much better to this. When we talk about the options, Denise, can you paint a picture for us about what's happening in schools, what will be happening in schools, and what happens in remote learning?
Okay, thank you. If Andre, you could just pull up the slides, I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay, so if you could go to the next slide. So for all parents and families, there are primarily 3 options. Going in school, as was described by Felicia, where for elementary kids, it's full day, 300 minutes per day, 5 days a week, with the hope of smaller classroom sizes, especially in the priority neighborhoods, there are caps. The second is called virtual schooling, and the third is homeschooling. We'll go to the next slide. I'm not going to talk about homeschooling. That will be done by someone else in the panel, and I'm going to focus mostly on virtual school because I think there's the most questions around that. So this is just a quick picture of where the areas are of the high priority areas. As you could see, it's primarily in the northwest of Toronto, with some areas being in Scarborough as well. The next slide, please. So again, the TDSB does not provide a homeschooling program that is entirely done by the parent. However, there is information that the TDSB offers, like EQAO information and so on. So we'll just go to the next slide. Like I said, somebody else will be talking more about that. So in terms of virtual school, this is very new for the board. It's going to be quite different than remote learning that happened last school year that went on from March break on, that was remote learning, and people were still connected to their home school. For virtual school, there'll be 5 virtual schools made up, 4 for elementary and 1 for secondary. The French immersion and extended French will be offered. However, specialized programs will not be. So I know speaking to Felicia earlier, she asked about the Afrocentric school, there will not be a parallel Afrocentric school happening in virtual school. And there will be a separate superintendent, separate principals, vice principal, teachers, and guidance. So if parents, you choose to go to virtual school, you will no longer be in contact with your home school. So you won't be calling the home school asking about report cards, asking about how to contact a teacher. You're now being transferred to like a completely different school, even though you're connected, but all your information will be transferred. So if you have any questions, you'll be going to that principal and so on. The hope is to keep people who are in the same area to stay in the same area for virtual school. So there's no guarantee, for example, oh, my friend is also going to virtual school, we'll be in the same class. No one knows yet. And I should have started with that. There are still a lot of questions and answers. We're still waiting to get them back as that's being decided on. If people should have devices from when they were given out earlier, but if there is a need for devices, maybe you were a family that only had one device, but now you have 2 kids who need it, you could make a request for another device in September. And virtual school and in-person school will start on September 15th. The next slide, please. So I'm not, so the big thing about virtual school, it would be synchronized learning of 225 minutes for 1 to 8, and for JK and SK, it's 118 minutes of synchronized learning. That's very different from the remote learning that happened. These are clear times that will have to be fulfilled in the virtual school. So it's a lot more time with synchronized learning that was done beforehand. The next slide, please. So here it is in terms of what it would look out. Students will be assigned an online homeroom. There will be daily attendance that will be taken. Previously, there was no attendance taken. Now it would be. So if someone is late or if they're absent, there will be follow-up. So say someone's absent for 15 minutes, so 15 days, for example, an attendance counselor will be followed up. So there is accountability. So if you've signed up for school, you will have to follow up, and someone will be there to check in on you to make sure for the safety of you and your children if you're not present. And the makeup of it will be 40 to 50% of the day will be large group instruction. Then there will be guided instruction with small groups, and still this will be synchronized. And then a smaller, even smaller one-on-one checks with we have thing called Check and Connect. And many schools use Google Classroom. This time, all of the platform will be done on another one called Brightspace. And the board will be providing training for parents and families about how to work in Brightspace. So it's a different platform. Maybe your kids did it, but most people, I believe, used Google Classroom previously. The next slide, please. And I hope I'm not speaking too quickly. That's my tendency usually. So I'm going to just keep going unless someone tells me to slow down. So again, this is just a chart showing the breakdown in terms of how much. So if you take a moment looking at synchronized learning, so you're going to have for kindergarten, whole group in sessions will be 5 to 6 sessions per day, while grade 1 to grade 8, there'll be 4 sessions per day of whole group instruction. Guided instruction for kindergarten will be 2 sessions per day. For grade 1 and 3, also 2 sessions per day. And grade 4 to 8 will be 3 sessions per day. And the live Check and Connect, you could see the layout. It's 2 for kindergarten and 1 to 3. And then from grade 4 to 8, it will be 1 session. And you could see how in kindergarten that would add up to 118 minutes per day. And from grade 1 to grade 8, it adds up to being 225 minutes per day. Going to the next slide. And so the big question that parents are asking is, can I switch? So if I decide to go in person and I decide, you know what, this is not working for my family, can I switch over to virtual school, and vice versa? If I'm in the virtual school, could I switch into in-person? Yes, you can do that. It's most likely going to be done at the natural breaks, because as you can imagine, going back and forth, teachers have to get to know the students to be able to do assessment, plan, to be responsive. So this is the kind of the timeframes that this can be done. So the first opportunity to switch would be approximately 1 month in the school year. So you could say on October 13th, around Thanksgiving, you would want to make a switch. And as I said, either way, to virtual school or to in-person. And the deadline to make this request is September 30th, but this switch will happen then. And the second opportunity will be after progress reports, November 23rd, will be the effective date when you will switch, but the deadline is November the 6th. And then your last opportunity to make the switch is after the distribution of the first provincial report card. And the deadline is January 29th, with the switch happening on February the 16th. Switch slides, please. So just to say, the board has a lot of conversations, a lot of workshops and seminars that's been happening. So if you go to the TDSB main page, you would see all the discussions that have been happening from topics like healing from racialized trauma, mental health, talking race with your children, and so on. So these are all webinars that you could tune into. The next slide, please. So I'm going to pause here because that's the virtual school piece for me. And I know that we're going to have conversations about managing students who become ill. So you could stop sharing the slides. And that's my bit about virtual school.
Thank you so much, Denise. Kemi, are there any questions?
Yes, we have one question. Hello, everyone. Glad you joined this session. Could you elaborate on what is synchronous and asynchronous learning?
Sure. So synchronized learning is when it's live. So right now we are having a synchronized conversation. I am live, you're here, and we're doing it. So the learning happens simultaneously as it's happening. Asynchronized means that we are not live. It's not happening at the same time. So, and that happened a lot last time. So maybe I had pre-recorded something. I've posted something. So students will do it on their own time. And that is quite different. So students and teacher will be on their chat at the same time, and they will have live conversation and feedback. So student has a question, they send it to the teacher will be responded. And they could see each other, have conversations as it's happening. So that's a big difference from how it was done in remote learning.
And could you explain what was the breakdown between the synchronized and non-synchronized learning?
It's primarily all synchronized learning that's going to be happening in the virtual school. 225 minutes of synchronized learning. It's just being broken down from the whole class to smaller guided class groups to even smaller groups or individual times where they're working together.
There's a question from Sumaya. How can the device be given by school, and how and when to ask?
So in September, you would make that request. Right. So what happens, school offices are actually open. So you could contact them, but you will need to have made a registration. Are you doing virtual or in school? Because if you're in school, you will not be given a device, but if you're virtual school, you get a device. So it's once you've made the decision about where your child's going to be doing it.
So everyone who does distance learning will be given a device?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. A reminder for anyone to type your questions in the chat box and we'll have them answered.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Denise. That was really informative, actually. Manuela, you are a parent and that is also a part of a faculty. What do you think about these options? Is there anything you want to add in terms of how York Region is doing things?
Yes, thank you. Like I said during my introduction with the York Catholic Board, so the overview is similar to what Denise, the administrator, is saying. There's some slight changes in terms of start dates and in terms of reentry points and things like that. But in terms of the asynchronous and synchronous and the fact that it's moving to more of a synchronous live instruction with a teacher. That's the goal for the ministry across the board, across Ontario. So it's going to look and feel a lot different than what it did in March or how it did in March. So I think that's going to be beneficial for the children who perhaps maybe were struggling with a remote learning that was not as synchronous. So if parents, had trouble that they wanted more of a connect with a teacher, perhaps this time around, that would be different and they'll have a more positive experience if that's the route that they're thinking of going. So like I said, it's very, very similar. And you know what, there's still a lot of questions that are unanswered and things that are changing by the day. My emails become swamped and, our entry dates for my board just changed again today. and the process is so fluid and organic that they keep saying, vigilance, it might still change. So my opinion is a lot is whatever board that the child attends, parents, a lot of information is posted on board websites. The reentry plans are posted there, and up-to-date information is put there for the parents to see. So if you go on a board website, there's a lot of up-to-date information for whatever board your child attends. So that's a good point to make.
Thank you. Thank you. Kemi, I see some questions in the chat. Did you want to get them? Did you want to read them?
If my previous device was not working, will you get us a new device?
Yes. If your previous device is not working, you would contact the administrator again and you would be given another device. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And then in regards to the next question, Siri, Mafdet, I'm sorry. Mafdet, my apologies. What is your experience with homeschooling? I know this is different from the other options. So can you tell us a little bit about homeschooling 101? Give us an overview of what that looks like. If we were to say no to both of these options, what would we then do?
Absolutely. I'm wondering if the remote learning, or what was it called? The virtual learning option is available for homeschoolers as well, because I know that through some school boards, you can actually take credits, that homeschool children can actually take credits through some of the school boards. So for example, I know we were talking about this in the previous homeschool discussion that we had a couple of days ago. My daughter and my son, my oldest two, they took courses in high school through the York District School Board, and they got their credits that way. They've also taken summer school and they've done night school. But overall, when it comes to homeschooling, there's a lot of one-on-one attention that you give them. So, and they get that individualized attention that that they can get that individual attention, so they learn very quickly. And for that reason, you don't have to have very long hours in your homeschool day. So you can work your homeschool schedule around your work schedule, or if you have a business, working on your business. So the way it used to look for me, and the way that it's going to look for me, because I'm also in college as well, is that I work on my business or school in the morning, in the daytime. Then I start my this homeschool day. And then when the homeschool day is finished, and I'll work on my business or and school after that as well. And on the weekends as well. So it really can be 3 hours a day that you're homeschooling your children when they're really young, because they have shorter attention spans. So you might want to keep each unit or each study lesson at about 30 minutes, and then move on to the next, depending on, and just pace yourself depending on how much that they can retain the information and how much their attention span will cater to. And then from there, you can increase the times as they get older, and they can start doing 1 hour lessons. They can start doing lessons online, credits online, and things like that. You could also delegate as well. So the things, the courses that and lessons that you want your children to have that you might not have strengths in, like if you want your children to learn French, for example, and there's somebody that you know, a tutor that you know, or an educator that you know that can teach them French, and they can learn that way, then you could always delegate tutors and educators to teach your children so they get their lessons that way. And you can work that into your homeschool schedule and your homeschool day. And then as they get into the high school ages, they can transition into college or university. You could always help them with gaining all the credits that they need so that they can transition into college or university easily, or they can do bridging programs as well.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm on mute?
No,
No,
me.
you-
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. I
Sorry.
know we have some questions in the chat. I just wanted to ask one quick question around, like, just right now. What was the first thing you did in terms of taking, you never had to register for your child for school, but do you just like withdraw? You talked a lot on Saturday about like logistically, what do we need to do to make sure that we don't get in trouble for not sending our children to school?
right. You want to get a letter of intent first, and you can get that easily online. You get a letter of intent, and you send that to the school, your local school, and then also to the school board. And just from there, that would be confirmation that you can withdraw them from school so that they're not marked as having absences. And that can cause, if you don't do that process, then that can cause issues in the future because they'll have too many absences. And then like we were talking about in the previous homeschool chat, is that it can lead to issues like with CAS and things like that. And you don't want to have those kind of issues. You want to just make sure that you're doing everything thoroughly. But the letter of intent, I think you could even find that on some of the school board websites as well.
Mm.
Was there a link before in the previous homeschool conversation that we had for getting a letter of intent? I don't remember.
Not for letter of intent. We just had one for
Okay.
for just the TDSB and homeschooling.
Okay. I'm going to look up a link and see if I could just post that in the chat.
Sure, thank you. Mhm.
So Kemi,
Could I just quickly say, one of the things is if you're planning going to a school, you should go to the school principal and they'll give you something because the superintendent will need a copy of that as well. So the school can also help.
Okay, thank you. All right, so there are quite a few questions. The first one is, has there been any discussion around face shields instead of masks for the younger children, or are only face masks to be worn?
I could go ahead and answer that. So students are only required to wear face masks, and they could wear their own if they so desire, or they could get one from the school. And they do not have to wear face shields. The face shields would be worn by staff. Yeah.
But if a child wants to wear a face shield, that's not allowed. That's
Sure. And I guess it would depend on, see how it goes too, right? Like how old are they?
okay.
Using it appropriately, is it age appropriate, and so on, right? Like in terms of a kindergarten kid and so on. Yeah. But all that's required of students is the face mask.
Okay. The next question is, are there any provisions being made for Wi-Fi connectivity? I am also working from home, and often sometimes the challenge of multiple devices pulling on the same Wi-Fi slows the connection. Really good question.
yeah.
Does anyone know the answer to that one?
As far as I know, there's no provisions being done for well, you know what, that is one that I think we could put forward to ask and see, because I know there was conversation last school year, but I haven't heard anything about connectivity this year. But there was conversation about how that could be provided, but I haven't heard confirmation. But it was something being talked about at the end of the last school year in terms of partnerships with cable companies and other such companies like Google devices, where some of the devices they were buying, it was built in and so on.
I was going to say that some of the devices that went out last year went out with Wi-Fi on them, but there was a survey that parents were sent out, and if they didn't have Wi-Fi, they got a device that already had the built-in. So
sorry, can I also chime in terms of that? I also believe the earlier distance learning, there were some areas in Ontario that didn't have Wi-Fi at all, and the remote connectivity was really low. So I think that's where the government's area of focus was, to invest in funds for those certain remote areas where Wi-Fi was was non-existent, and students couldn't log on to their devices. So I think in the area right now, just like Denise said, I myself as a teacher haven't heard any Wi-Fi that's coming up, or no any new investments in that, other than what's already installed in the device.
Okay, thank you. Next question, if we opt for virtual learning, so do we still need to register the child in the area we live in, or do we have the option to choose any school in the TDSB?
If you do virtual school, you're no longer with a home school. So online, I mean, you could contact your home school. It's like you're going to a separate school, right? So you're not going to be connected with any brick and mortar. So like you're not saying, oh, I'm going to be at this school in another neighborhood. You will be placed in a classroom in a virtual school, either one of the four, and you will be assigned to a homeroom, and you'll be informed to that the homeroom who the teacher is, who the principal is, and who the other students are. You would meet on the first day of school like anywhere else, and so you would not be given a choice in terms of where you'll be placed and who you'll be placed with.
Okay.
The question.
Thank you. Another question, will the same teacher who will be teaching the class in person be also responsible for virtual learning?
No. So just to go back again, what's happening in brick and mortar, in-person schools and virtual schools are completely separate, which is a difference from last year. So if you choose to go into a virtual school, for now, you no longer have anything to do with your home school. Now going to be placed in a separate school altogether. And you will not be like seeing live streaming or anything like that. It will be a separate teacher who will be teaching you and talking to you. If you then choose that you don't want to stay in virtual school, you'll be put on, you have to make that request, then you'll be put on a waiting list to make sure that there is space. And then if you're put back in your home school, then be going back there and be connecting with different students, a different teacher, and so on.
We have a few more questions, and I know that Felicia probably wants to get on with the other panelists, but so I'll do 3 more. And then we'll get the others later. How can kids write exams if they do homeschooling?
I think that's a question for you, Mafdad.
Okay, I was looking for the place to post the link for the letter of intent, but I'll look for that later. So writing exams for school wouldn't be a part of homeschooling at all. There's tests that you can take or that they can take as they're transitioning into university or college. They can get their, I'm trying to remember, their GED if they want to do it that route, or if they want to get all of the credits that they need so that they can get into the program that they want in college or university, but exams aren't necessary.
Okay, and somebody following up on the last question in terms of virtual schools, how do we apply for the virtual school? Do you still apply from the home school?
There is an online connection. Like if you go to TDSB, there is a link. If you're not sure of the link, if you call your home school, they will let you know of the link so you can do it online. It is also possible to go to your home school, but you would have to make an appointment. So either you go straight to the website, and Manuel could see this for her board, but you go to the website and it's an online registration process. And the second option would be the home school, calling the home school first to make an appointment for COVID-19 safety purposes, because there isn't you could go into school anytime you want. You have to make an appointment.
Okay, another question. I understand teachers are going to find it not easy to make children to follow instructions, to follow social distancing and other safety protocols. Could you share how you feel about this on the teacher's point of view? How are the teachers getting ready for the new mode of school, in-school learning, and with the new safety protocols? I think that's for both school boards.
Manuel,
yes, yep, I'm here. You know what, I think it's going to be a learning curve for both, students, administrators, and staff. I think that first and foremost, when students are brought back into the classroom, we really have to be cognizant of their social and emotional well-being and their mental state, because, you know, they've been home for so long and they haven't had an opportunity to interact. So it's, you know, there has to be things in place so that a teacher, you know, admin, teacher, the entire school community, EAs, whoever's working there, you know, needs to keep that in mind, and establishing routines again, and going through what the protocols are and what the expectations are in the class right from the get-go. In terms of what teachers are doing, I know it's a ministry all through Ontario and all the boards, regardless if they're public or Catholic. Teachers are going to be in service on health and safety protocols, how to put on masks properly, how to deal with questions from the students, hand washing, sanitizing, and things like. So we are next week having to attend a health and safety day so that we can help for ourselves and for our students.
So if I could add to what Manuel said, I agree with her fully. I think the most important thing is the well-being and mental health of our children. I think that's the most important thing. Kids have to feel safe, they have to feel cared for, and they have to feel loved. So the first thing we're starting with is take some deep breaths and relax. Like, we're not going to start school by shoving down curriculum down kids' throat. We need to make sure that they feel comfortable. We have to look at their anxiety, look at the effects of trauma. So we're asking teachers to work on that basis first. Make sure they are well, that they feel safe, and figure out all those protocols, like the safety piece. After taking care of the well-being, what's the safety piece? What's going to be the routines? What's going to be the protocol? How often are you going to take them outside? Because issues of equity continues. I mean, so not only are we talking about the trauma of COVID-19, for some students, there's a trauma of the anti-Black racism. It's one that has to be looked at as well. And those things have to be addressed. And I know at the Toronto District School Board, that's part of the training that teachers are going to be engaged with. We have to talk to our kids about race, in addition to other anti-oppression issues that have to be looked at. So I would say the most important thing that teachers are going to be focused on and preparing for is the well-being and mental health of our children. And then once that is established and so on, we could start looking at the curriculum, because we know there's new things to look at. How are we going to work? Because teachers are also trying to figure it out. So I think we have to be compassionate and kind with each other, because for teachers like students, this is a very new situation where we know group learning and kids interacting with each other is so important. But now we have to put some restrictions on those things, and we have to figure it out as we go along. And hopefully we could all work as partners with each other, figuring out how to do that effectively for our students. So is it going to be perfect 100% at the very beginning? No, it's a learning, and we have to be compassionate around figuring that out.
Could I just jump in here? I want to add to that. We said the student, and I'm going to add the families as well. As I've been, you know, I thought I was going to get some time off, but I haven't really, because we've been connecting with families throughout, whether it's in Rexdale and stuff. And we look at it holistically speaking, because if the families are not well, the children cannot be. And so we are also, I work with staff all the time, we're always saying we need to kind of understand the trauma that families are experiencing. Because when the family experience trauma, the children brings it to school. And so oftentimes when I intercede in conflicts with teachers, staff, and families, that's where I come in and just tell everybody, take a breath. You know, let's see where we could meet together. So I just wanted to add that to Denise's point.
You know what? I just also wanted to add, I was going to chime in. My current role is an HPE teacher. I in the elementary panel, I taught, you know, grade 2 for a number of years, and now I'm in health and physical education. And when I had to do the remote learning in March, I did a lot of mindfulness activities with the kids, and dealing with anxiety and breathing. And, you know, I was able to accomplish that remotely. But I think now there's also lots of information and resources out there for parents that the board can provide on the board websites, because I know a lot of government money is going to invest in mental health. So there are resources out there for the families as well, and for the children.
So we're gonna do 2 more questions, and then we're gonna go back to the panel. Just to let everyone know, please keep putting your questions in because we are saving the chat. And if you want to get those questions answered, we can send, if you put in your email address, we can send the responses to you after. So one question I will ask it's around health and safety, and then Farai will ask the next question. And so I'm combining 2 questions from Jerusha and Donna. If I sign up for in-person schooling but feel that safety provisions are inadequate, can I switch to virtual schooling immediately if a child gets sick? What protocols will be followed? I've heard of the possibility of not seeing my child or being told that my child is at an undisclosed location. And the final health and safety piece is, if there's a breakout in the school, does the teaching automatically become online, or will there just be a 2-week quarantine and a wait and see approach? So all of those are health and safety things.
Well, there's one word answer for all of that. No, I'm just joking. There were many parts to that question. So there's never a time you will never know where your children are. You will always know where your children are. There's no Secret Service involved in undisclosed locations. So school just means that you will know where your child is. You're going to be dropping them off. Definitely, there are restrictions when asking parents not to be coming into the building in and walking out, like that freedom that we had before, only because of the whole contact tracing and minimizing exposure to the students there. The virtual schooling, you're at home doing the learning while you're working with someone on the computer, on a device. And I don't know if you want to talk about it now, about if somebody gets sick, because I know Felicia talked about there was going to have a conversation was coming about this.
Well, maybe we'll leave it for that then, and I'll let Farai ask one question before we go back to the panels.
All right, so Samaya has a question about the timing for virtual school. She wants to know the start and the end time.
I don't know of official start time for, if I don't know, it hasn't been disclosed yet what that is going to be. So we will find out about that. I don't know if it's going to be some variation from school to school, because as I said, there are 4 schools, just like any any school, there are different times. I mean, that more has to do with busing. So it's still unknown what it's going to be, but it's most likely going to be in the range of regular school time.
Are those, sorry, I had a question around that. Are they broken up? I know that there's 4 sessions that are going to be in class. So are there going to be 4 sessions and then like a break, or is it like all day like school would be?
Well, even in school, there are breaks. So there are going to be breaks involved, because there's no way kids are going to sit down in front of a computer for straight 224 minutes. You're going to lose them.
Yeah, no,
for your own mental health and not feeling as if kids are disengaged, you're going to have to build in breaks with the kids and be creative around figuring that out. So there will be breaks, I guess. Be a lunch break.
I just meant like 4 sessions, and then like, so is it at 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 10 o'clock, or is it like 9 to 3 with 15-minute breaks? Or, just that's what I was wondering, how the breaks would be.
The official breakdown has not been disclosed as yet. And what is good or bad, I know with the Toronto District School Board, we in schools are getting it almost at the same time as parents. And if you go on the TDSB website, and it's going to be made live. So as soon as they are ready to share what the timetable is for virtual school, that's being made clear to parents, because there's a short span of time, right? To get information out, but it hasn't been disclosed as yet.
Yeah, thank you. So the next question, and I see that there's a lot of questions in the chat about this, and it's about the outbreak plan. Yesterday, the Ontario government revealed its outbreak plan, and some of the highlights were, and this is like straight the highlights from the article, I didn't choose them, but what happens if a student feels ill at school? Basically, if the principal believes that the child is suffering from symptoms of the coronavirus, they'll be taken to a designated isolated area where the parents will be contacted, and then students and staff will be wearing the appropriate PPE. If a student or faculty tests positive, anyone who tests positive for COVID-19 within the school community, including students, staff, bus drivers, they will be asked to remain in isolation for 14 days. They will not be allowed to return until they are cleared by the local public health unit or their healthcare provider. However, it is not necessary to provide evidence of a negative test in order to return to the school. The cohorts connected with a positive case within the schools will be considered a high risk of exposure. And then also, if a parent or bus driver contacts COVID-19, it is not mandatory for the parent or guardian who tests positive for COVID-19 to inform their child's school, but I think just operating in community, and officials say it is strongly recommended, it is strongly advised that they do. Officials said that it would then be the responsibility of the public health unit to inform the school after the contact tracing was done. So panelists that work with the TDSB, how is this different from previous measures put in place regarding school outbreaks for other things like, chicken pox or hand and foot or measles? Like how is this different?
I would say what is the same is that everything has always been guided by the Toronto Public Health. So if we had like measles or whatever else, we contact the Toronto Public Health and ask them what is the protocol. They have letters that have to go home. One big difference is the whole idea of a designated room. So as you said, if a staff has any of the symptoms, then they have to go home immediately. If a child has any symptoms, there is a designated supervised room that they would go to, and we'll contact the families right away to come and contact them. So a big piece is the designated room, separating them from everyone else, right? So every school has to find such a room. And while they're there, they will be supervised, and the person in that room would have mask, face shield, gown, and so on, the whole 9 yards. And there's a sink in the room as well. So, again, the priority is keeping that child safe and keeping the community safe as well. Okay. So that's the big difference. The other ones, they weren't designated rooms that someone had to go to and separate from.
Okay. And then the second question is from the people on the panel that are parents. How do you feel like there's the safety plan makes you feel more confident in sending your child back to school? I know that last week there wasn't one, and now there is, and so that kind of changes things. So how do the parents feel on the line around how prepared TDSB or all school boards are in regards to this plan?
As a parent, I'm glad they have, they put something in place. I'm not 100%, I'm not even 60% confident that I think, that's gonna support the children in any way. It's heading in the right direction. Okay, if somebody does get sick, they're gonna isolate the person. But now how far do you go back and isolate everybody else? So if there's one child that gets sick, my child's gonna be in kindergarten with 27 other children. So if one child and they assume this child has symptoms, that child's gonna be moved to a separate room. All the other 26 children now may have contacted it. They're going to go home to their families and spread it to the rest of their siblings and spread it to everybody else in their household. So how far, and then now you've come home to me. And it's not only if a child is sick today, it doesn't mean their symptoms actually started today, right? They said normally the gestation period is 2 weeks. So this could have been a 2-week period that the child has had symptoms and it's just only showing up now. So that's, whoever they've been in contact with for these 2 weeks, they could have spread it. I've gone to work. Now I've spread it to whoever I've been in contact with. The teacher has spread it, with the rest of the faculty. So if there's one child that has the symptom and they isolate that one child, I don't see how that's keeping the rest of the school safe, or the rest of the community safe, because, they've spread it to everybody else they've come in contact with.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to chime in? I think this might be a good time to answer those the questions around the outbreak plan.
So maybe what I'll do is maybe I'll just add something. The TDSB is also asking the ministry to hopefully use the saliva test. It's not approved, but this is one of the things that they had asked for because that's something that could be at home. So let's see if that can happen, because so far the test for COVID is kind of uncomfortable. And so if we know that there's a saliva test out there, so if that can be part of this conversation, it would also help from at home.
If I could add, Virginia, you're raising such important questions about concern that parents have. I agree with you. And I think that's why, in terms of preparing our kids as much as possible to be vigilant, and part of the school day is going to involve regular hand washing, for example, right? Like it's not going to just be left to, well, wash your hands when you feel like. That's going to be something co-created with the students. How often are we going to wash our hands, right? So it is done regularly. And that's why we're asking for families to start preparing their kids to wear a mask at home now, because it's uncomfortable. So they need to start getting ready to wear a mask for longer and longer periods of time. So they need to start wearing it at home now so they're comfortable. So you could find out, like, so they could figure out strategies. They need to learn how to take it off and how to put it on, right? Hand sanitize before you touch the mask and before you put it on. Taking it off, you should also hand sanitize, take it off, hand sanitize after, right? So all these processes, I think, is so important that kids learn how to do. The whole thing about mask etiquette, or just in terms of just coughing in your sleeve and so on. So those things are so, so important. And I think the Toronto Public Health has done a really good job in terms of putting out videos so people could learn, so students could learn what they need to do to minimize that spreading. Because you're right, there's no immediate way of knowing, because a child or staff may have symptoms and we don't want to villainize people at the same time. You coughed, oh my gosh, right? Because now we have to deal with equity issues. So if a child coughed now and they start being teased, you have COVID, you got COVID, like it becomes a new cooties thing. So how do we then deal with that kids are not affected by it, right? So it becomes really important that we are vigilant on that front. Hand washing, hand sanitizing. I know schools are talking about, making sure there's hand sanitizers in classrooms at entry points. So kids are hand sanitizing when they go in, when they leave the school. There's a whole process about eating. You're going to wash your hands before you eat. You're going to wash your hands after you eat. All those things become really, really important that be done to minimize it. Because there's no way of knowing. You're right. Some kid could have it, and then how many people are affected? And so the other thing that schools are doing is that whole tracking all the people that come in the building, so we can effectively say, do that tracking of people thereafter. So I just hope families don't get upset. Again, I have to write my name down? Yes, again. Because it becomes important to know.
We're going to be teaching the children to wear their masks and to keep them on, right?
Yes.
For the whole day. However, they do have 2 snack periods and they have a lunch, right?
Yes.
So they can wear it, they're wearing it, and now they've taken it off to eat their food and do whatever. So the whole purpose of them wearing it is pretty much, if they have something and now they're taking it off to eat, they're spreading the germs anyways. So they've had it on for 3 hours, and now this 15 minutes that they have to have lunch or to have snack, it kind of makes it all, pointless for what I'm saying, because they're taking it off and they're spreading everything anyways.
You mean while they're eating?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They have to take it off to eat, right?
Right.
So, and I think they get 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon. And I think their lunch is about an hour or 45 minutes. So for that duration, they have no mask on.
Exactly. So it becomes then, are they socially distanced enough? And also, in terms of how they're going to be eating and maybe not talking at the same time and all that kind of stuff, right? And then in terms of,
putting it on paper, it sounds like it's great. I understand, I know. But if it's on paper, it sounds like, we've connected the dots, we have everything in measure. But when you think of it, logistically and how it's actually going to play out, right, it's not a concrete plan. And then we have the teachers wearing face shields plus a mask. It's very scary for children who are starting school in the first place. You kind of need that comfort from your teacher. I remember when I was young, you just wanted to see the smile, as scared as I was, but seeing the teacher smile and look at you and kind of give you a hug, oh, it's going to be okay. Like all of that is kind of, they're not able to do that this time around, right? They're going to be covered. They have the face shield. And I think that's great because the teachers are having protection, the double protection. And now they were saying kindergartens to grade 3 didn't have to wear a mask. So now they're making the mask mandatory for them as well. However, so what about the face shield? Like, I think the whole thing, whatever the teachers are wearing to protect themselves, should also be in place for the children.
So I just to speak to the face shield and the mask, is one of the things that we don't have enough information on, or we don't get enough, is that the mask actually only protects you from spreading it. It doesn't protect you from getting it, right? And so having the teacher wear a face shield and the mask, I think that's great. That's like double protection for our children. And then the children only having face masks, that's not that much protection for the teachers, unfortunately. And I think that we should all, like, you know, we should find other ways to make it happen. But the only thing I think we can do is like test it out and go through trial and error in terms of the classroom and the distance learning, because I think this is brand new. Like the first day of school will never be the same for anyone, right? So I feel like we should definitely give grace to everybody who is going through the situation, because it's what are we calling it? Unprecedented. It's never happened before to us. And as difficult as it is, there's no way to make a plan on paper that we know is going to work for sure unless we test it. And unfortunately, we have to be the I don't want to say guinea pigs, but we have to be the ones.
But the testing is going to be done on our children, which is not fair.
Which is not fair at all. But who, like, how would we test it out? Otherwise, how do our kids go to school?
Just like they have other, you know, when they have vaccines and when they have other things that come out, it takes them years to put something out before they put it into place.
Absolutely.
I think like everything was just too rushed for school to be opening, in my opinion, right? Like they still need to be doing more testing, and nobody really knows how it's even getting spread. Like we're saying it's getting spread through when the children talk, and it's getting spread, you know, through the air, but nobody knows exactly, you know, what steps we need to take to prevent it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for having school to open at all is very risky, and making our children the guinea pigs is not the way to go about it.
That's a really good point. Really good point. And for those, sorry, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was just saying that's why the option is there. That's why the other two options, the virtual option and the homeschooling option, because this is an experiment. And so we want parents, families to feel comfortable with whatever decision it is. So, you know, so if you don't feel like you want to be part of this piece, you do virtual. And if you feel more comfortable when you could then go on that waiting list to transition back, then you have that choice. But I must say, this is one of those trying times for everybody.
I understand. Not all parents do have the choice, because a lot of parents do have to go back to work. So it's great if, you know, I could be at home and I could do the distance learning from home, but I have to go back to work, so I don't have that option.
Yes, so we're gonna have to work together. We gotta have to work together, and it will be trial and error as it starts. We're hoping that there's not an outbreak. I'm crossing my fingers deeply, and then we're gonna work but we're in it together. We're in it together. And if you see something that we need to change, then that's what we got to do. But we're in it together. This is unprecedented, as we say.
Can I respond to the working and doing the virtual learning option or homeschooling option? One thing I was thinking first is that I think that there is the option to integrate the virtual schooling and homeschooling. You can do both of those things. And then the second thing is that when it comes to working, unless you're a single mother or a single father and you have very limited resources, you could always bring together your village and your community and share that time that you're homeschooling your children with other people or other parents that are homeschooling. Or you can always switch with your spouse or your partner. If they have work schedules a certain time, then you can always switch with them and have your work schedule as a different time if that's possible. So there's different options when it comes to homeschooling.
Yeah, and just speaking of, you were talking about homeschooling. You spoke with us on Saturday about co-ops and how we can share the time between different spaces for our children, or different other homeschooling parents for our children, so that we can still work. That I know that Kemi, are you on the line? We have several questions.
Yeah, and Farai is going to help me, but there's several. Let me begin by asking, Donna is asking, how often will common areas in the schools be cleaned?
Oh, that's a really great question.
I don't know if anyone has it.
This must be cleaned on a daily basis.
the common areas on a daily basis.
Yeah.
All right, so on a daily basis, yeah. The next question is, one virtual school will be comprised of how many neighborhoods? What will be the basis of selecting students per virtual school?
I'm not sure what I mean. I'm not sure, because I know it will be just breaking the schools up, the students up, I think, evenly, so it's manageable, right? So you're not going to have one school that has, these numbers are not real, 200, and another one will have 50, right?
Is
So
there any geographic?
how many students are there for virtual school? And hopefully it's been done by their areas. There are 4 what is called learning centers in the board, and it will be divided up according to those. But of course, it would have to be evenly distributed.
Farai, did you want to take a question?
Yes, I have Elva's question, and her question was, what will be the impact of the brick and mortar school if the attendance was already low and multiple parents choose to keep doing virtual learning?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So the question is, what will be the impact of the actual brick and mortar, the school itself, if the attendance was already low and multiple parents are now choosing to go the virtual learning option? So what will happen to the school?
So schools are not going to be closed, but there may be realignment of classes and where teachers are working.
And I just want to add that because in this time, in this moment, the things when TDSB and the government used to say, well, this school is not at capacity, every school will be at capacity as we begin to try to minimize and lessen classroom. So I think 2020 to 21 is a wash in terms of what we had before, when they would be like, these schools are going to be arced. I think for the next year or so, we won't be hearing this. The brick and mortars are safe for now.
There's a question, if my child attends school in person, so can I pick him up during lunch and drop him back at school?
Yes, it is allowed. Children can go home. And of course, there will be the whole piece around the screening test on entry, as well as the hand sanitizing and so on before re-entering school.
And the next question is, unless someone else wants to add that, why can't they lower the classroom sizes? It seems that we are in a high-risk area.
So in those high-risk areas, classes are being lowered. Because as you've heard all about in the news, TDSB is getting more teachers, and they're going to be going primarily to those priority neighborhoods. So class sizes would be smaller than other areas.
And the reason why they couldn't go to all school is that they don't have the budget.
Right. And the priority is and also we have to wait to see, right? And we're still waiting to see what each school, what the numbers are going to be. It's not known yet how many students are going to be going to virtual school and what will be left in in-person schools.
And here's a really important question. What about the classes for children with special needs?
So special ed classes will be continuing. It's in terms of ISP in learning disability or autistic classes, that will be continuing in terms of their support, because usually those classes are already smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They'll continue as is?
Right.
Just going back, I know you covered this earlier. The question was just, will there be report cards for virtual learning?
Yes, definitely. There has to be
Yes.
assessment, and there has to be report cards. That's a central part of learning. Yes.
And here's a question, which is what this entire panel is about. What should a parent look for with regards to the setup of safety protocols in the school in the new model of in-person learning? Or how could a parent decide if it is actually safe to go to school? I think that's a big question.
Well, that's going back to Virginia's whole concern, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any 100% surety? There isn't. And I think it sometimes has to do with your life circumstance, as Virginia talked about. Some parents may feel they don't have a choice, that they have to send their children to school because they have to go to work. So I think in terms of how do we prepare our children in terms of to be safe themselves? How are we safe at home in terms of what we're doing? And how do we hold schools accountable, right? In terms of following through on what was promised.
I have something from my community hat. I'm gonna wear I'm distancing myself from TDSB. So here's my question. I heard somebody said that folks didn't have, if they had, let's say, COVID, they could come back to the school, they'll have to disclose it. But I know that if every year we do, people have to show their vaccination. And if you don't show it, you can't come, you could be suspended from school until you show it. So my question would be out there, if folks had COVID, wouldn't it make sense for us to have and I know that was probably the government side of things. How would the school system, if somebody were sick, and to ensure that when they come back, everything was kosher, everything was good, to manage that?
I think that's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Just to say, like in terms, and I don't know if Andre, you want to share slide 11 on the slide deck that I shared with you. One of the questions asked, have you been in contact with someone COVID-19? Right. So if that is no, sorry, go to the next one. Sorry, I think you're looking at an old one. No, that's why I was asking if you had the Google Doc. Andre, the Google Doc has the new slide 11. So one of the questions on the screening is, have you been in contact with COVID-19? And if somebody shows to be to be positive, the Toronto Public Health takes action right away in terms of doing contact tracing and in terms of contacting the school. So that is something that's immediately done. Yeah. So I don't know if you could see it really well, if it could be go and present. Right. So it's kind of blurry, but one of the questions is, have you been in contact with someone? And that will be one of the concerns. And if you could go to the next slide. And the next slide. Right. So Toronto Public Health would contact positive cases directly and provide a letter directly to the other staff and students identified to have a high risk of exposure. So there is that accountability that Toronto Public Health will be following up.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Andre.
Another question, how do I know which, and I think we answered this, which 4 schools I will get in for virtual? Please elaborate what is meant by 4 schools. I think we spoke to that already.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is the TDSB, and this kind of addresses what somebody asked in terms of nurses in schools, is the TDSB considering bringing back school nurses who are actual nurses to properly review symptoms?
That's something that's up in the air. Definitely there'll be public there'll be nurses, but what that's going to look like, how that's going to look, where they're going to be, is still to be decided and shared with everyone.
And up to date is about 500, but the TDSB has more than that school. So now they're going to have to deal with logistics. Wow. Or provide more public health nurses.
And I think this was a comment from Anisha, probably agreeing with Virginia, but it's a statement saying it's ridiculous for anyone to think that young children will follow these rules and forced to wear masks. It looks like child abuse.
Okay.
One question, I think we should go back to the panel after this because we want to find out about the community supports. Are they building more washrooms?
No, I mean, you have to think about how long does it take to build a washroom? Where's the washroom going to be built? Where's the money to be built to build more washrooms? But so I could confidently say, even though I wasn't given permission to speak on behalf of the TDSB, that new washrooms are not going to be built. But what I can say to ensure safety is that the washrooms will be cleaned on a regular basis. Also, soap will be, there should be soap at all times.
Yes.
As well as hand sanitizers, and there's going to be a process for students to be going in and using the washrooms where they could be socially distanced. So a whole bunch of students are not going to be going in the washrooms at one time. So that's one of the pieces schools will be working on in terms of identifying, is there someone in the washroom already? How many, based on the space, how many kids could go in a washroom, teaching kids how to wash their hands and how to use hand sanitizer. And so part of the protocol would be, but before you leave the class, you use hand sanitizer. When you re-enter the class, you use hand sanitizer right away, right? So that's part of the protocol and that we worked on with students.
And just to add, it seems to me they're going to hire some more. While some of my school had, you know, caretakers, we didn't have enough. I think now they've provide some funding to hire more. And I
Yeah.
think they're going to put them in the schools that has highest impact during COVID. So, you know, North Etobicoke is part of that.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I do one more last question before I hand it back to Felicia? I think you already kind of answered this one, but I decided to keep my children home. How can we get access to laptops? I think you covered this a little bit, but can you just go over that for someone?
Emma, is it TDSB that you're a part of? If so,
You would contact the school to
Yeah.
find, because once you've registered and you've been confirmed, you'd have contact information and you would make a request for another device. Okay, because like the TDSB previously, and I'm not sure what the process is, but you know, if it was your previous home school, or the contact information that'll be given to you for the virtual school you're in, so you can make a request. So that is not being made available as of yet, but come September, once we start, that would be made really clear how you could request another device.
And just to add, from a community level, you know, we meet in North Etobicoke. What we've been discussing is how do we find permanent computers in these homes? Because COVID has exposed the inequities. So myself and Delta and all that, we sit on a cluster and we're having conversations. So what we would like to do as a community body is to look at homes that need devices and at least have one or two devices, because TDSB is a loaner and sometimes they don't work. So what we want to do is see if we can connect with some of these technology people, companies. We started that process already. It'd be good if we continue it in the community and make sure that if this ever happened again, we wouldn't be in this position. Thanks.
Can I just add something? I think Reboot Canada, I don't know if they have the program anymore, but Reboot Canada, you can actually get. Was someone saying something?
No. I go ahead. There's a delay, I think.
Oh, okay. I think with Reboot Canada, you could actually get laptops or computers as well for student and youth. But then also, I forgot to mention that you can also get materials, curriculum materials, and do testing through the school boards as well if you register with that while you're homeschooling. So that's also an option.
Thank you. And thank you for, if everyone could look in the chat, Mafdad has put a lot of information in regards to homeschooling in there. So you can copy and paste that and check those links out as well. Sana had a really, really important question. And then I also wanted to talk about community supports. We have 8 minutes. So Sana had asked, will the virtual schooling options have access to social workers in case domestic violence issues with children in case of the domestic violence issues children may be exposed to? So does anybody, Denise, you're shaking your head.
Yes.
Yeah.
All those supports that you would get in a school would be made available in virtual school as well.
Okay. So is there a number of like faculty like watching or on the screen at the same time to see what's happening, or is it just like a teacher would have to be observant and notice?
Well, as previously, what would be done in a classroom often starts with a teacher observation, a student disclosing personal information or in their writing and so on, or you seeing their behavior, a change in behavior. So all those signs, and then seeking assistance from a social worker, the administrator, and so on would be done.
Okay.
Yes, the social workers would not be on classrooms necessarily.
Denise, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to perhaps ask you to clarify for the parents for your specific board. I know for our board, for the remote learning virtual schools, there's going to be an administrator assigned to those schools. So for whatever parents need, just like any other regular day school, that they contact the administrator that's going to deal with the school. So perhaps if parents know that once their child is going to be assigned to the virtual schooling, there's also going to be an administrator assigned to that. I know with our board, but I'm assuming with yours as well. So things like what just came up, social workers, whatever your board, guidance counselors, whatnot, even speaking in terms of teachers or maybe problems with the classroom teacher that, you know, a parent would like to address, they have that option to speak to the administrator that has to deal with the virtual classroom. So maybe the parents aren't aware of that.
Yes, exactly what Manuela said.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a nuances. Like the thing with virtual, it is virtual. So oftentimes at a school, something happens, they would hold the child back and made the phone calls. Now there's nuances when you're on virtual, so it will be a little bit more complex. Not that it cannot happen, but I want to show that nuances in the normally the whoever is, let's say I don't want to use the word offender, but let's say the word just for today, would be in the same home while the virtual thing is happening. So there's nuances there, and I think it would have to be addressed in a particular kind of nuanced way, you know, because these things are complex on virtual, and we have learned that over time dealing with our communities during this pandemic COVID experience.
Yeah, definitely. It's a much more sensitive issue because, you know, there is no out of the home. And that's what's arisen so much over the pandemic, is that if anything is going on in the home, we're all stuck there, and people are not able to kind of disclose as much or to say as much. And if there was a disclosure or an investigation and something happened, they'd have to go right back into that home. There is no outside. So it's really, really, I guess, very sensitive in terms of being able to identify those things virtually. Before we go, I just wanted to...
Felicia, sorry to interrupt. I was looking through the chats, and I think it's really important for parents. It looks like a lot of the parents are from the TDSB, and some of the questions were, am I able to take my child out for lunch? Am I able to bring lunch to my child? And I know we probably hadn't had time to touch on that. I'm not sure how it is with the TDSB, but they're trying to minimize foot traffic in the schools. So they're trying, if the student is at school, they're at school for the entire day, and to bring everything that they might possibly need, because they don't want parents in and out bringing lunch. I know like hot lunch programs, things like that are canceled with my board. I'm assuming it's the same. So just so, because I know there's parents on here listening that, you know what, that's probably might not be an option in case it's probably an emergency or something like that. But I know schools are trying to minimize foot traffic in and out, you know, until the end of the day, the child stays in school. So even just for contact tracing and anybody, you know, that walks in.
Denise, did you say something? It was a different case for the TDSB. They can pick up their child and bring them back.
So families are being encouraged to send whatever they need, send the child with whatever they need, including their lunch. But at no point in time is the board going to refuse parents if they want to take their children home for lunch. So yes, there's a difference with encouraging.
No, it's just minimizing the traffic for, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But if a parent wants to take their child's home, it is allowed.
Of course.
And it's important for parents to know that they wouldn't be able to come into the school to pick up their child, right? Like
yes, okay.
Even for dropping off lunch, they would not be seeing the child and so on, right? It'll be dropped off in the office. And again, it's going back to the safety concerns around minimizing contact and so on during the day. Yeah.
Thank you. The last question that I have is for all panelists, but I'm also Senna, who works with the local immigration partnership around community support. So at Delta, since the beginning of the pandemic, we have moved programs online, and we've had early years programs. We've had food services. And the school year is going to be no different. We will be moving our after-school programs online in order and to support parents. My question is to other community organizations on the call, other community organizations on the panel. What is your organization doing to support parents in these unprecedented times? Sana?
Yes, so I can definitely share with you guys the information that we've been working on. So I will share my screen now. So one of the website that we've developed is called Welcome to School website, and we've been working on this initiative for over 3 to 4 years now. And during the time of COVID, a lot of the programs and services were modified, and therefore we started a page around COVID. So once you come onto the website and you go click on here, or you can actually just go directly over here, it says resources during COVID-19. So a lot of the questions that people were asking, we've kind of created like a hub. So a lot of the information to a lot of the questions people may have are listed onto the website. So for example, people were asking questions around registration, and I know Felicia had put in the web link to it, but people can click. Are you able to see the next page? Or you're just seeing
You're going to register. I think we're seeing what you're showing.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay. So for example, you can go on, and then this is the website where you can register for virtual sessions, virtual classrooms. And then same with remote learning and well-being in the TDSB. So a lot of the information that Denise was also sharing is also could be found here. So it's like a one-stop shop for a lot of the information that parents or frontline workers or service providers may have questions to. So not just that, but we also have information on after-school programs, more information about school reopening. So even Delta's program was listed right here because that was a session that was happening. Another one's happening also September 2nd. So a lot of program supports for learning at home. So we have it listed here. And as you know, information is changing so rapidly. So we're just trying to keep track of anything that comes out. And we've definitely seen things have changed overnight. And sometimes we don't have access to a lot of information. But as soon as it comes out, we try our best to populate the website with that information. So this is all the information in regards to COVID and what are the programs that are currently running and how they could be modified. Now, mind you, we also have programs that were previously listed that include understanding the Ontario education system, get ready for school. So all the different programs that organizations may offer, and this is Toronto-wide. So we have programs listed from Toronto South, Toronto East, Toronto North, and Toronto West. And our catchment is the Toronto West, but the programs are listed Toronto-wide. And we can still you're still able to contact the different organizations to see if how they're running those programs, right? So they could be running programs like, for example, the LBN Neighborhood Services is running an after-school program ages 6 to 12. Now, this might not be the same way that it was running before COVID, but we can still get in touch with them because the contact information is provided to ask how the program might be running, and if there's capacity for parents to register their children, because a lot of the parents are going back to work, and situations with children to be placed somewhere after school needs to be discussed. So all that information is there. Our news is also continuously being updated. And we're trying our best to keep up with the things that are coming up. And because it's changing, so it could be completely different one day and it could be completely different the next day. So we're just trying our best to keep on top of that. Another thing that if you are connected with other community organizations, they can also submit their programs on here. So once they do that, we can populate the website. And this is one of the ways we're reaching out to service providers and different community organizations to help us get their programs listed on the website, because there's so much information and it's just kind of scattered everywhere. So it's just kind of the website just aims aims to kind of bring all the information in one place. So I do encourage everyone, the website is directed towards frontline workers. However, at this time, anyone is able to use it, and any support that they're able to get from it. I highly recommend for people to go. And then even if you see like Safety Online, like there's a lot of supports available that we're just trying to kind of populate the website with.
Okay. Could I go ahead and just add a few things? Since 2008, I've been part of the Neighborhood Action. Now it's called the NIA, Neighborhood Improvement Areas. And so one of the great things I think that happened before COVID and the pandemic was we always meet together with all the community agencies and some of the families that live in North Etobicoke, Rexdale area. So it was only natural when this happened, we continue that process. And so for the last little while, partners like Delta, Rexdale Community Health Center, Albion Boys Neighborhood Services, they have been providing support. So not only have we able to provide, gift cards, grocery gift cards, hot meals. Today I was delivering Nigerian and Caribbean and vegetarian meals. And we do it from Queen's Plate to Finch. And so the good thing is we've been connecting with our families. And then when they were online, when the teachers couldn't get a hold of them, I would drop by and remind them in the community that, what's going on, why are you not online? So that connection with this community agencies team has been a powerful thing for me. And so, I want to thank all of my school council members that joined this meeting today, that I do appreciate them, that it's because of them why we do this work in community. So I just want to say, and we'll continue to do the same thing ongoing. So, everybody has been kind of working extra hard. I'm working on getting masks, so if the school board runs out, we have some as well, to connect with communities. They always know that we're there for them. So that's all I have to say.
You're muted.
One day I'll get you.
Well, you're unmuted.
That concludes the questions from me. Kemi, if there are any more questions in the chat, the time is 7:37. In the interest of time, we could wrap. All the questions that have been unanswered, feel free to drop your email. We have some of your emails, but if you could drop your email in the chat, we can get back to you with some answers either through a phone call or an email.
I think Denise has a question, and I know you're going to ask everyone to say a word as they sign out. Yes. Denise, what's the question?
It's not a question, but if I could just ask Andre to share my slide 14. It's just things like little pointers to remember, if you don't mind. It will be really quick.
Andre, slide 14, please.
On the Google Doc, on the Google slide.
Are you comfortable, Denise, with us sharing the Google your Google presentation, your PowerPoint? Good, so we can share that as well.
Okay. I don't know if Andre is sharing the.
Andre, yeah, he will.
Oh, Andre going, yeah, he's gone back
a while. Yeah.
He thought I was.
Sorry, give me a second.
Did you know that's okay. That could go on.
And Sana will share just the link to the website. Okay, good.
It's just the whole thing that I was speaking about earlier. I just wanted to reiterate that piece about remembering to start getting your kids in the habit. I'm sure they've been doing it already, but for them to get a sense of what a social distance is, especially for younger kids, it could be a very, I think, creative ways to say, well, what do you think 2 meters is? How would you know it's far enough? Right? Coming up with creative ways outside and inside. And that is actually math as well in terms of doing estimating distance, having them practice wearing a mask, especially when social distancing isn't around. They should start practicing it for long periods of time. I'm sure you're doing hand washing, but just getting them to do that, not as if they're home, but as if they're out. Before you eat, wash your hand. After you eat, wash your hand. Before you go outside, wash your hand. When you come back in, wash your hand. Just getting them into that routine, practicing that respiratory etiquette of coughing in their sleeve, practicing avoiding touching their face, their eyes, even if they're at home. And that whole thing about making sure you know what the self-assessment questionnaire looks like, which is on the city's website, as well as the Toronto Public Health website, and to make sure you have a backup person. If your kids are going to school and you cannot be reached, you're busy, have 1 or 2 people who could go and pick your kids up, who you trust. It's really important that you have that backup. Be prepared for it, because it might happen. And that was the last few things I wanted to share.
Thank you so much, Denise. Thank you. And just to reiterate, everybody on the call, Denise's PowerPoint will be made available to everyone and sent out through email. And then all the links in the chat will also be sent out through email. I want to thank everyone, the panelists. You were a wealth of knowledge and information. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being with us and talking with us. And we're going to, on that note, we're going to check out. So if there's anything that you want to leave us with, I'm going to give you one word. I'm going to ask you to leave us with one word before you check out of the conversation, all the panelists. What is one word to sum up everything that you feel or you want us to feel? I'll start with who I can see on the top screen. So Sana, one word.
So I'm hopeful that whatever is being put in place is going to work, and the kids are, regardless of us having doubts, are actually going to understand the risks behind it, not for just themselves, but for people that they live with. So I'm hopeful in the system at this time.
Thank you for being here. Denise.
Patience.
Patience. Thank you. Sankofa.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm unruly. So what I'm going to do is say this, that be a part of this change. Be a part of the children's life. Just because we say something, it doesn't have to mean that, because input can create another reality. And I just also wanted to remind folks that for September and October, they're talking about having outdoor school, having the classes outside because of COVID, so they could breathe in a little bit of fresh air. So you might have to dress your children for the fall because they want to be creative. And for the families, and maybe I'll send my email. Maybe you could also put my email in the chat. So I will always connect and we'll always work together for the betterment of your family.
Awesome. Thank you, Sankofa. Manuela?
I guess my word is trust. You know, as a parent, trust in your instinct, in your decision, whatever decision or whatever route you go with, either virtual, in school, homeschooling, trust your instinct, trust your decisions, and, you know, trust if you decide to send them to school, trust the school, trust the system. So I think it's going to be trust, and I thank you for having me on tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Kemi. You're on mute. Me.
I'm doing the Felicia. Thank you everyone for coming. It was a really important discussion, and we know that everyone's anxious. So I guess the whole thing is I think it was Manuela who said that breathe. You know, nothing's going to change overnight, so you just need to breathe.
Thank you, Kemi.
Sounds like a poem. It sounds like a poem. Breathe, take a breath and breathe. Take a breath and breathe.
Virginia?
I guess my one word is prayer. You just got to pray and hope for the best.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Mafdat?
I just want to say thank you for having me on the panel. My one word would be inclusivity. because as homeschoolers, we also would love the support of educators, even if you're not homeschooling your children or you don't have your children in homeschool, but even school programs could help support parents as well that are homeschooling their children. So mine is inclusivity. There's no division because we decide we want to homeschool, that we're not a part of anything to do with the school boards and vice versa. So, and also it's very possible to homeschool. So, and there's ways around a lot of the things that people feel like they have boundaries or issues with actually making steps towards schooling. And if anybody needs help that, they can contact me and I'll help them out.
Thank you. Thank you. Farai?
My word is gratitude. Grateful for all the panelists and every single parent, caregiver, any single person that was able to tune in and share any of their questions that provided a healthy discussion. And hopefully people are walking away feeling like they have some sort of information that they could start with. And as we all try to make sense and make a better understanding of what's going on, and we could do it together. As Sankofa loves to talk about community, we are part of the same community and we are working together. We're on the same side, right? So let's continue to work together and hopefully we can continue to support each other as we support our children, right? Because they're our children.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And that concludes the whole panel. Oh, and I guess the word that I am leaving with there's just critical thoughts. Someone said trust. I think it was Manuela. Trust yourself and trust the decision that you make is the best decision for your family. No two people are the same. No two families are the same. And you are doing what's right for you and yours, whether it's going back to school, whether it's deciding to homeschool, whether it's the virtual learning. You know how to best serve your children. So trust that you have that. And that is that.
Can we just get Andre to see if he wanted to say anything? Not to forget him because we're not seeing him.
So unlike Santa, I'm actually going to follow the rules and say one word, Santa.
No.
And my word is hope. Honestly, I was a little nervous, even just based on what I vaguely knew. But after you got presentations from Denise, from Virginia, from the options of homeschooling and everything, I have a lot more hope now. So it's good, and it's good to feel informed. So yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for promoting it and getting the word out. I think it was important that people were here.
Yeah.
And don't forget to leave your emails if you want any of the content on the presentation. Drop your emails in the chat. Don't forget before we log out.
Drop your emails in the chat. Don't drop that. Drop your email in the chat. Breathe. Take a breath. Drop your email in the chat.
It's a poet.
And you know it. I'm a poet and you know it. Drop your email in the chat. Drop that. Breathe. Take a breath. Knowing where we got to be. Stay away from COVID free. The beginning. Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Thank you so much.
Maybe give them a few more seconds. People are typing in their emails in the chat.
Okay, good second. Type your email in.
There we go.
Big up Elva from Elm Bank.
Okay, Elva.
Narusha from Elm Bank.
Okay, everyone. I'm going to end the YouTube stream.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. If you're on YouTube, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, YouTube family.
Big up Anisha.